Hi, Ultimate Gardeners.
Hi, my name is Nathan.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Rachel.
Now, this week's channel of the week, we have with us from the Wisconsin vegetable gardener, Joey and Holly Baird.
This is the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener YouTube channel. I'm Joey Baird, and along with my wife Holly, we produce a number of video series each week on our YouTube channel as well as our website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. We have our traditional or original video series, the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener, as well as a newer series, First Garden, New Gardener, tackling the problems that a new gardener would face, as well as straight to the point. No waiting around, we dive right into the topic at hand, as well as those who are limited on time, our weekly 60-second garden tip help provide them a lot of information very quickly. Our pride and joy is the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show. In 2023, it will mark its 7th season. We do it in-house as well as broadcast it on our YouTube channel. It is a love that we have created from a one station in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And now in 2023, we will be broadcasting on 20 AM and FM frequencies across the United States. It'll be heard in parts of 26 states, March through October. We have funded the show through multiple sponsors that we work very diligently on in order to pay for the airtime. That is who we are, Joey and Holly Baird of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener YouTube channel.
So, all right, let's welcome Joey and Holly Baird of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener to the Let's Get Growing show.
Thank you.
Joey. Hey, Holly. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing
We are
great.
good.
Awesome. It's really great to have you guys on our show this week. And I see that you're there where you do your radio show.
Yes.
Yep, in our in-house studio. Our first 3 years of doing the radio show, we started in 2017. We went into the studio and did it, and that was a learning experience. And then, by just fortunate, I guess, circumstances prior to the pandemic, we said we're on too many stations. We just can't do what we do in a studio. We have to create our own. So we were able to work through the pandemic in our home studio and without any problems.
Yeah. I think that time of our lives has really kind of showed us to be a little bit more self-sufficient. And again, too, that's so kind of how my whole idea for my own home studio kind of got started as well, too. So we talk a lot on our show about garden stories. I've got 2 of you here, so I'm sure that we've got a couple of different garden experiences. I'll let each of you take a turn there. How did each of you get started in gardening?
Yeah, so I grew up in the city of Milwaukee, and we had a very small backyard garden. It was probably about 4x4, 4x6, but it was something that we grew vegetables every year. And my parents did have some landscaping plants. I remember having a bleeding heart bush specifically. And then we also composted behind our garage. So we had a little compost pile, and we would throw sunflower seeds in it every year and grow some nice sunflowers because it had a nice southeastern exposure to the sun. So that was my experience in gardening. And then I met Joey, and he was a totally different type of gardener.
I grew up in Southern Illinois on a large farm. We always had some type of large garden. So as far as I can remember, we have always gardened on the farm in some form or fashion. It was always as many things as we could grow because we had the space, and Mom is a very heavy in canning. So we would put up 20 or 30 quarts of ketchup a year, multiple quarts of green beans, grape juice, grape jelly, fill in the blank, that we canned that. So that's the experience that I had growing up. Never knew anything different.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great different stories there that you have. So when you guys met and all of that, did you guys immediately start gardening together, or did you find yourselves through gardening, or what was your first garden?
So I think our first garden together is So I had moved to the St. Louis area for a job transfer, and that's where I met Joey. Who's
14
from,
days later, and we've been
Yeah.
together ever since.
I met Joey, who's from Southern Illinois, so he's from the southeastern part of
Way down there.
southeast from St. Louis, and we eventually grew. I think it was tomato
And peppers, yeah,
Yeah,
in
and then
containers on your balcony.
yeah, and then I remember chasing off, was it a raccoon or
Yep.
a possum,
Raccoon.
something like that. Yeah, and then eventually we moved to another place and grew on our patio. And then after I moved back to the Milwaukee area, Joey came with me. My mom has this huge backyard for a city, and she's like, if you want to turn this into a garden, please go ahead. That means I don't have to mow the grass. And that's where we started to really garden together on a larger scale.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. So, what were some of those first plants that you guys got started? Well, I guess you mentioned tomatoes and peppers that you did on a balcony and everything, but when you got into the ground space and really started gardening, what were some of those favorite plants that you guys started growing?
I think root crops, aside from the tomatoes
Yeah,
and peppers, just being able to grow onions, beets, potatoes were definitely exciting. Not that you can't grow crops in containers, it's just a lot, I think, easier in the ground.
Right, a 10-foot row of potatoes produce a lot more than 3 5-gallon bags,
Yeah.
grow bags
they
on a
certainly do.
patio. Yeah.
Yeah, for some of us, we're just kind of limited to being able to do that sort of stuff, but it's always awesome if you do have that in-ground space to be able to really expand it out. Like you said, you could get a lot more potatoes, and that's for sure. So I seem to kind of garden those in containers for fun when it comes down to it, because you only get so much.
And
So
you want to grow something, if you're in containers, you want to grow something that's going to continue to produce, like basil or
yes,
rosemary or tomatoes, where it's a continual harvest throughout the year. It's not just one and done,
that's right.
which
That's
is
right. And
great. But it's like I spent all this time for 4 potatoes.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I say, like I've done a couple of videos, each year on the container potatoes, and it's one thing I always say is that you never know what you're going to get until you
Right.
pull those up out of the container. You don't know what's down in the soil there. I had so many years of just these big, beautiful potato plants coming up out of these containers. Just looks awesome. And so my hopes are really high. I'm like, oh, this is really great. And then you only get a couple of little ones out of it. But still, kind of fun to be able to do that anyways. But again, you're totally correct when it comes down to it. Growing in the ground when it comes to potatoes and root crops is probably the best way to get the best type of harvest out of those. So, what are some of your least favorite plants to grow in the garden? I know you're a really good gardener and all of that, but there's got to be some that really present kind of a challenge to you, right?
For some reason, we cannot grow broccoli or cauliflower. We can grow other brassicas like kale, cabbage, even Brussels sprouts.
We do
But
great Brussels
yeah,
sprouts.
but broccoli and cauliflower for some reason just don't do well for us. We
Yeah.
have friends who live in the same area who can do that. I don't know why it doesn't work out for us, and it's not a huge deal because you can purchase things like that at a farmer's market, but it was frustrating for
Right.
us.
And we can take that 2 square feet of where that cauliflower or broccoli plant would be and throw a tomato plant in there or a cucumber, and we're going to get a lot more production out of it and spend the $2 somewhere else and buy the plant that we can't grow, because tomatoes in the summer are next to gold in most areas.
Mhm.
The volume or the value of them, because there's nothing else that's comparable to them. But doing that, yeah, we cannot grow that broccoli or cauliflower at all. There's years when we have potatoes. We did fairly decent a couple of years in the garden that you see on the video series, and then that really diminished, and we've done everything possible to make that happen. So we have stopped growing potatoes. Holly's sister's backyard, we can grow potatoes phenomenal every year, no questions asked, and that's about 8 miles as the crow flies. So you learn when you do this enough, as you found out, there's certain things that I could fight and fight and fight and make it grow, or I can just put something in there that's less of an effort and get more of a production out of it. And then I can supplement the difference at a farmer's market.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if something's taking up the space and isn't doing too well, you could definitely be doing something else. And similarly for me, I mention each and every week here, actually, pretty much is that brassicas are my challenge as well. I did have somewhat success this last year with my broccoli. I'm hoping this year we do even better. But, like you said, too, it's amazing. I've got neighbors, I've got friends that are here locally who grow some amazing broccoli, grow some amazing cabbages. And just for some reason in my space, it just doesn't work out as well. I'm sure there's something that has to do with my gardening and how I'm getting them out there in the garden or taking care of them or something. I'm sure in the long run, but it's a challenge that I tell myself each and every year, we're going to win this challenge. I'm going to grow some broccoli this year, and hopefully that'll work out this year too. So, for you guys, so we've talked about your garden story. We've talked about how you guys got started gardening and all of that, and you've been growing all of these different things in your different spaces and everything. And somewhere along the way, you thought, "Wow, let's start a radio show. Let's start a YouTube channel. Let's get out and share what we're doing in our garden experience." So, what inspired you all to get everything started and sharing?
You do the YouTube, and I'll take care of the radio.
Okay.
All right.
So we started with a Facebook page, and has it always been the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener?
It's morphed a couple of names in
Yeah.
order to get what it is now because of the way it was set up on Facebook.
Yeah. So we started the Facebook page for gardening tips for people in the Midwest, Wisconsin, etc. And then we would just offer tips, post pictures, share things, you know how social media is. And then in 2011, I
Yes.
believe, I had won a video camera from work, a small, like this Kodak, almost GoPro, but not. And we actually now own a number of them that we've purchased throughout the years. And Joey was like, "What are we gonna do with this?" And I was like, "Let's make garden videos." And so
Neither
was
one
like,
of us has any
No.
level of videography experience whatsoever.
if you want to see a rough first video, just scroll all the way back.
Yeah.
On our YouTube channel. So so then we started doing that, and then we upgraded to a better, like a what's it called, wireless mic.
Mhm.
And we still use these very simple basic cameras, and we've talked about upgrading, but they do work well. So that's how we got into making the YouTube videos.
And 2,200 videos later, we're still doing it.
Yeah.
And then we had always kind of pushed around the idea of, we do these YouTube videos. We had got mentioned and featured on a couple of local newscasts here in the Milwaukee area. And we said, well, why don't we let's try to do a TV show. Everybody wants a TV show. So we had, in the process of doing the YouTube channel, we had stumbled upon a guy named Joe Lampo. We didn't know who he was.
Joe,
And then we started messaging him, and he said, "Hey, why don't you give me a call? I'm on my way down to Atlanta on Saturday morning." So I call him. Well, first of all, Holly and I start Googling him and figure out he's got this show and that show, and this guy's a big guy.
He's not just some guy.
So I talked to him for like 2.5 hours, and he said, "Here's some things you need to start doing, and here's some things you need to stop doing." And in the process of that relationship, we reached out to him and said, "Hey, we'd like to have a garden radio show in Milwaukee, or a garden garden TV show." And he said, "Everybody wants to have a garden TV show. Do radio. That's where it's at. Get on whatever station you can, the tiniest little station. That's where you want to be." Well, we had posted some videos in a local group on Facebook here, and somebody said, "You need to have a radio show." So we, again, having no experience whatsoever in marketing or radio or anything like that, broadcasting, we stumbled through 2015 to try to broadcast for 2016 and failed miserably.
We had a podcast.
Yeah, we had 2 years of podcast.
Yeah.
And we have one sponsor that's still with us from those years, rootmaker.com. And so we stumbled and we made 1% of the budget that was required. We have to pay the airtime for all the stations we're on, and through sponsorship, we're able to do that. So then in early 2016, we were both full-time employed, and I got laid off at the job I was at, got a good severance package, the whole deal. And I said to Holly, "Let's try this radio thing one more time since I got a little time." And you didn't want,
not happy.
You were not happy with it because of how bad it failed in
We
2015
crashed and burned.
yeah. So we got a hold of Mike Novak, Nikki Jabor, Doug Oster, and said, hey, here's what we're attempting to do. You've done it very successfully for many years. Tell us what you know. Tell us what we should know that, enough to help us out. And we had conversation with them. And from there on, we reached out to companies and said, here's who we are. Here's what we're doing. You want to sponsor us? And that first year we had 18 sponsors. And now, 7 years later, we're on not one station, but 20 stations. And we have currently 27 sponsors. And the stations are giving us extra replays because they're getting so much, so many people are wanting to listen that can't listen when the show originally airs. So that's where we're at 7 years later. And we've built a massive database of companies local to each market and nationally that we work through each year in order to get the responses and the amount, the yeses to pay for the airtime.
Excellent. Yes, persistence pays off, right?
There's you got to have a lot of patience because you're going to get a lot of no's. As of right now, I have gotten 966 no's to the 27 yeses that we've gotten for sponsors this year.
That's right. You got to stay on it. And that's kind of similar for me as when I first got started with my YouTube channel too. And I agree with what Holly was saying. Go back to my old catalog and see some really, really fun and creative videos for sure.
But as long as we are better the next video, we learn from each video and we get better. That's the goal here.
Yeah, there's one video in our basement and the lighting is so terrible.
But the audio is good.
The audio is good.
Audio is good.
Yeah.
That's what they say. As long as your audio is good, you're good to go, you know. But definitely. And then, similar what you were saying there too, there were several different instances where, I'm like, I want to expand my channel into interviewing and meeting other gardeners and all of that. And you get plenty of no's right off the bat. In fact, one quick story I'll mention is how I met our friend Mark Lachey Colbert, who does our In the Garden segment at the beginning of the show. I was out, just reaching out to different places. He works in this really cool 4-story building that has a rooftop garden on it that supplies all of their vegetables and food for the restaurant down below. And I thought this was the coolest thing. It would be a really cool feature for my channel. So I sent them an email and I was like, hey, I've got this YouTube channel. I'd love to come by and do a little feature on your rooftop garden. And all I got back from them was this email that says, thanks, but we'll pass. Mm-hmm. And so, again, back to the idea of persistence, though, too, was, I looked at their website, noticed that they had a public viewing. They were, you could do a walkthrough of their garden that they offer to the public on Tuesdays. And it's like, well, how about if I just stop by and check out the public viewing and all of that? They were like, okay, yeah, absolutely. Anybody can do that. So I did. I showed up. I had my little phone camera and everything. And they asked me when I showed up, like, are you the one who sent us that email? I was like, yeah, but you guys seem to want to pass on the idea of doing a video. And they're like, well, we got our garden caretaker up there. Maybe he'll show you around. And right from there, and that built this whole really great relationship and friendship with him and their business and their rooftop garden. And I've done other videos with them up there and all of that since then. But the idea of persistence, keep at it if you got a dream and something that you want to do.
We find a lot of sponsors that reach out to us or follow us on Twitter. Mm-hmm. That's their biggest mistake, but they're happy now that they've done it because they're seeing the return on investment with what the productions that we put out. So that's how we find companies. We just dig, and I do this full time, the radio show. Holly has a full-time job in house, and failure is not an option for the radio show for me because Holly says if we don't make the radio show work, I have to get a real job, and I've been told I don't want a real job.
That's right. I feel the same way. I would, I got to make everything work. I don't want to have a real job. I've told myself and my friends that same thing. And, it was, and actually kind of how I found you guys though, too, is, I thought of originally after I started my YouTube channel, similar to you guys, I was like, oh, I want to do a radio show. I've been a big fan of, in fact, early on in my teenage years, started listening to a radio show on the weekends up in the Pacific Northwest by a gardener named Cisco Morris. Mm-hmm. Now, Cisco is one of my favorite. I loved listening to his Saturday morning show and always thought, and was actually told years ago, hey, you should do radio. You got a voice for radio. I thought if I ever did that, it would be about gardening and something similar to that. So I did. I looked up other radio shows around the country, and that's how I found you guys years ago, and kind of been following along ever since. And really think that you guys have something really good there. I love listening to your guys' banter. You guys actually communicate well with each other and have fun on your show. And plus, you have a lot of really great guests and everything, similar to what we're trying to do here on our show, too. So I encourage everybody to go out and check out Holly and Joey's radio show and YouTube channel for sure, where they also feature a lot of those segments from the radio show. Now, anything else that you'd like to leave us with, or any...
Well, for people who may just be like, tuning in to radio or your program, it's not, you just don't sit in front of a mic and talk for an hour. There is hours and hours and hours of work to go into
Yes,
produce an hour or an hour and a half program. It's literally a full-time job if you want to do it right and have long-term success. You
yes,
just can't half it. If you half it, you don't exist. You don't last long.
that's right.
Go ahead. What's coming up or what projects we've
Yeah,
got?
exactly.
Do we have projects
Well,
coming up?
our seedlings are started now, and when the weather breaks here in zone
Oh, yeah,
5,
we'll be starting.
in the next couple of weeks, we should be in the garden. We should have some in-garden videos, and we have turned this YouTube experience into an occupation with the YouTube and then the radio, and that was a hobby at one time. And now that hobby has consumed us to the point where we have to come up with another hobby so we don't get crazy and go bonkers. So we have revisited what we used to do back before we met each other, which is camping and outdoor activities.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we started another YouTube channel, Time by the Tent channel, and that documents our camping and our outdoor activity stuff. And I don't want that to turn into an occupation, but it's something that we document what we do, in addition to the gardening stuff. And then we are able to somewhat separate the two and have some off time from one versus the other.
Yeah, I told Joey, I said this time by the tent can be an enjoyable, positive thing for us, but it's not going to consume our outdoor camping, literal time by the tent time. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, well, eventually I'm just gonna throw the camera down and walk away if it starts to consume us too much. So that's my plan.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Keep it fun, keep it a pastime.
Not that I don't hate gardening or anything like that, but it does
The focus has changed dramatically.
The focus has changed, and I don't mind the structure of having a gardening radio show or anything like that, but definitely want to keep something a hobby. That's a hobby. That's for sure.
Right.
Yep, yep. We definitely got to have some variety in our lives for sure. As passionate as I am about my gardens and all of this stuff, you're right about the idea of having a show. It takes a lot of work to put into it to get everything done. And definitely really enjoyable. Love it. But, got to have other things that you like to do as well.
Right.
Yep. Excellent. So really awesome to have you guys come and join with us here for our Channel of the Week segment. Really appreciate you being here. We got Joey and Holly Baird from the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. Go find them on YouTube. We'll have a link right down in the description. And thanks again for joining with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.